I didn't expect her back so soon. Did you make sure that everything is ready?
She has absolutely no idea about any of this.
Perfect. By tomorrow, everything will be in our name.
You are a genius, Mother.
The door slammed against the wall so hard the framed photo beside it cracked. Folasade Adeyemi stood frozen in her own hallway, one hand still on the door handle, listening to two voices drifting from the kitchen. Voices that didn't know she was home early. She should have announced herself. Instead, her feet stayed rooted to the marble floor and her breath caught in her throat. She still doesn't suspect anything, Kelechi was saying, his voice low, almost gleeful. By the time we sign, everything will be in my name too. And the warehouse is in Apapa? Madame Nkechi's voice was sharper, colder than Folu had ever heard it. Those must be transferred before the wedding, not after. Once she's your wife, we move fast. Folu's chest tightened. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides. Every polite dinner, every gentle touch, every whispered, I love you, from Kelechi replayed in her mind like a film reel she suddenly couldn't trust. Because they weren't speaking English in that kitchen. They were speaking Igbo. Before her thoughts spiraled further, hey, if you're already feeling the tension building, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story only gets more intense from here. Drop a like if you love a woman who fights back with her mind instead of her fists, and let's jump back in. 3 months earlier, Folu had first laid eyes on Kelechi at her cousin's wedding in Ikoyi. He'd worn a simple white kaftan, nothing flashy, nothing that screamed wealth or desperation, which was exactly what drew her in. Men who chased her money always overdressed, overspoke, overpromised. Kelechi did none of that. He asked about her mother. He asked about the scar on her wrist from a childhood accident. He remembered small details other men forgot the moment she mentioned them. You're not like the men who usually come near me, she'd told him that night, laughing softly over a glass of Chapman. Maybe they don't know how to look, he'd said, his eyes steady on hers. I'm not interested in what you own. I'm interested in who you are. She'd believed him. God, she'd believed him with her whole chest. Their courtship moved fast. Dinners in Victoria Island, weekend trips to Calabar, long phone calls that stretched past midnight. One evening, standing on her balcony overlooking the Lagos skyline, Kelechi had cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss that made her forget every warning her mother ever gave her about smooth-talking men. She'd kissed him back, fingers gripping his shirt, heart hammering, certain she'd finally found someone who saw her. Not her bank account, not her properties, just her. I could stay in this moment forever, she'd whispered against his lips. Then, let's make forever happen, he'd replied, and 2 weeks later, he proposed. She'd cried real tears that night, the kind that come from a place she thought she'd sealed shut years ago. But Chinwe, her best friend since secondary school, hadn't been convinced. Folu, listen to me, Chinwe had said one afternoon, stirring her tea aggressively, agitation written all over her face. No man is that flawless. He agrees with everything you say. He never gets angry. He never disagrees. That's not romance. That's strategy. You're overthinking it, Folu had snapped back, more defensive than she intended. Not every man is out to use me. I didn't say every man. I said this one feels rehearsed. Folu had brushed it off then, irritated, almost offended on Kelechi's behalf. Now, standing in her hallway, listening to him plot with his mother like she was a contract to be closed, Chinwe's warning rang louder than any wedding bell. She wanted to burst into that kitchen and scream. She wanted to grab Kelechi by his collar and demand to know how long he'd been lying to her face while kissing her lips. Her hands trembled with the urge to confront, to unravel, to let every ounce of betrayal spill out right there on her marble floor. But her mother's voice cut through the rage, steady and old, a memory from childhood. Folu, language is not just for speaking. It is for listening. The world will tell you many things in front of your face, but the truth hides in what they say when they think you cannot understand. Her mother had drilled Yoruba, Igbo, and Bini into her from childhood, alongside English, not for culture alone, but for survival. A woman who understands everything around her can never be fully blindsided, she used to say, tightening Folu's braids a little too hard for emphasis. And now, standing outside that kitchen door, Folu realized the joke was on Kelechi and his mother. They spoke in Igbo, confident, careless, certain. Folu barely understood a handful of greetings. They were wrong. Dead wrong. Folu closed her eyes, forced her breathing to slow, and instead of storming in, she took one step back, then another. Quiet, careful, deliberate. She would not give them the satisfaction of her rage tonight. She would not let 3 months of a carefully performed romance end with her screaming like a woman scorned. No. She would do something far more devastating. She would smile. She backed out of the hallway entirely, slipped out the front door she'd just walked through, and stood on the porch, heart pounding, tears threatening but refusing to fall. She pulled out her phone and dialed the one person who'd warned her from the start. "Chinwe," she said, voice trembling but firm, "I need you to come over right now. And don't say I told you so. Not yet." "What happened?" Chinwe's voice sharpened instantly. "I heard them. Kelechi and his mother. They're planning to take everything from me after the wedding." Silence on the line, then a sharp inhale. "Folu, what are you going to do?" Folu looked back at her own front door, at the warm kitchen light spilling from the windows, at the life she'd built brick by brick with her own hands. Now under threat from a man who'd kissed her like she was the only woman in the world while calculating her net worth in his head. "I'm going to let them think they've won," she said. "For now." By the time Chinwe arrived 20 minutes later, Folu had composed herself into something unreadable. Calm on the surface, a storm underneath. They sat in Folu's car outside the compound, engine off, streetlights casting long shadows across the dashboard. "Tell me everything," Chinwe said. Folu repeated the conversation word for word, watching Chinwe's face shift from disbelief to fury. "I want to walk in there and drag that woman by her head tie," Chinwe hissed. "That's exactly what they'd want," Folu said. "A scene. Tears. Something they can twist into she's unstable or she doesn't trust family. No, I'm not giving them a story to tell. I'm going to write my own." "So what's the plan?" Folu exhaled slowly. "Barrister Uduak. First thing tomorrow morning." The next morning, sunlight spilled across Folu's office as she sat across from her lawyer, a stack of property documents between them. Barrister Uduak, a woman in her 50s with sharp reading glasses and an even sharper mind, studied Folu's face carefully. "You're certain about this?" she asked. "Irrevocable trusts move fast, but they move permanent. Once these properties are in trust, even you cannot easily undo it without the trustees' consent." "I'm certain," Folu said, voice steady despite the tremor still living in her chest. "Every warehouse, every rental property, every account outside the business itself. I want it protected before the wedding, not after. And the prenuptial agreement? Ironclad. No loopholes. If he truly loves me the way he claims, he won't fight it." Barrister Uduak studied her for a long moment. "You already know he'll fight it." Folu's jaw tightened. "Then let him fight. Let him show his mother's hand." That evening, Kelechi arrived at Folu's house with a bouquet of red roses and that same disarming smile that once made her heart skip. He kissed her cheek, then her lips, lingering there just a second longer than necessary. "You look tired, baby," he murmured against her mouth. "Long day?" "Long day," she agreed, forcing warmth into her voice, her hands sliding around his neck like nothing was wrong, like her whole world hadn't cracked open the night before. She kissed him back, soft, unhurried, and hated how easily her body still remembered wanting him. "I missed you," he whispered. "I missed you too," she lied smoothly, pulling back just enough to search his eyes for any trace of the man plotting her downfall. She found nothing. He was that good. Over dinner, he mentioned, casually, too casually, that his mother thought it might be simpler for the wedding paperwork if some of Folu's properties were jointly titled before the ceremony. "Just to avoid stress later," he added, twirling his fork. "You know how lawyers complicate things." Folu smiled, cutting into her food with deliberate calm. "That's thoughtful of her. I'll think about it." Inside, something in her hardened permanently. Over the following 2 weeks, Folu played her role flawlessly. She let Madame Nkechi call her "my daughter" over the phone, sweet and syrupy, while Folu quietly transferred properties into trusts Kelechi and his mother would never be able to touch. She smiled through dinners where Madame Nkechi probed gently about the wedding budget and which accounts would cover the ceremony. She let Kelechi kiss her goodnight at her doorstep, his hands warm on her waist, and she kissed him back with just enough hunger to keep him convinced. But behind her bedroom door, she cried. Not from heartbreak alone, but from the exhaustion of loving a lie so convincingly that she sometimes forgot, for seconds at a time, that it wasn't real. "How do you do it?" Chinwe asked one night, watching Folu remove her makeup after another performance of a dinner date. "Kiss him like that, knowing what you know?" Folu met her own eyes in the mirror, mascara smudged beneath them. "Because the moment I stop smiling, they'll know I know. And I need 5 more days. If this story has you sitting at the edge of your seat, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more, because what happens in these final 5 days will leave you speechless. Comment below if you think Kelechi already suspects something. 5 days before the wedding, Kelechi sat across from Folu at her dining table, documents from Barrister Uduak spread between them. His jaw was tight, a muscle ticking there that Folu had never noticed before. Or maybe she'd simply never looked closely enough. "This prenup is excessive, Folu," he said, voice carefully controlled. "It's like you don't trust me." "It's standard practice for someone with my portfolio," she replied evenly. "Every lawyer would advise the same. But irrevocable trusts?" His voice rose slightly, the mask slipping just a fraction. "You've locked away almost everything. What exactly is left for us to build together as husband and wife?" There it was. The crack she'd been waiting for. "Kelechi," she said softly, setting down her pen, "why does it matter so much what's in trust versus what's jointly owned? If your love for me isn't tied to my properties, none of this should bother you." He opened his mouth, then closed it, visibly recalibrating. "I just want us to start our marriage as equals," he said finally. "Not with you holding all the cards." Folu studied him for a long moment, something cold settling into her spine. Then, in fluent, unhurried Igbo, she said, "Amaginam no ginagin abali ahu." "You didn't know I heard you and your mother that night?" The color drained from Kelechi's face so fast it was almost comical. His mouth opened, no sound coming out. "Folu," he started in English, panic cracking his voice. Every word, she continued in Igbo, then switched back to English, her voice never rising, never trembling. "The warehouse is in Apapa. The accounts you wanted transferred before the wedding, not after. Your mother's little timeline for how fast you'd move once I became your wife. It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Kelechi? Because it sounded very simple to me. You never loved me. You studied me." His hands trembled as he reached for hers across the table. She pulled back before he could touch her. "Folu, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I heard it in your mother's own voice. I heard the plan, and I let you keep kissing me every single night after that because I needed time to protect what I built with my own 2 hands before you and your mother could take it." The doorbell rang. Chinwe, right on schedule, let herself in with Barrister Uduak trailing behind her, a folder of finalized documents in hand. "Everything's already done, Kelechi," Folu said, standing slowly, smoothing down her dress with a calm that felt almost otherworldly. "The trusts are irrevocable. The prenup is unnecessary now because there's no wedding happening in 5 days." "Folu, you can't just—" "I can. And I have." Her voice finally cracked, just slightly, the first true emotion breaking through since that night in the hallway. "Do you know what hurts the most? Not the money. Not even the lies. It's that you kissed me like you meant it every single time, and maybe some small part of you did, but not enough to stop plotting with your mother behind my back." Madame Nkechi arrived 20 minutes later, alerted by a frantic phone call from her son, storming into the living room with fury blazing in her eyes, fury that dissolved instantly into panic when she saw Barrister Uduak and the stack of signed documents on the table. "Folu, my daughter, surely we can discuss this like family," she started, her voice syrupy sweet, the same tone she'd used for weeks. "We are not family," Folu said quietly. "We never were. You made sure of that the night you planned to strip me of everything I built." "I don't know what you think you heard." "I heard everything, madam." In Igbo. Clearly. Folu's voice remained steady, but her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. "My mother taught me every language spoken in this house long before I ever met your son. You should have asked what languages I speak before you decided to plot in front of me." Madame Nkechi's mouth opened and closed, no defense left to offer. "Please leave my house," Folu said. "Both of you." Kelechi lingered at the door, guilt and desperation warring across his face. Folu, I did fall for you. Somewhere in all of it, that part became real. Folu looked at him one final time, memorizing the face she'd once thought she'd wake up to for the rest of her life. Maybe it did, she said softly. But real love doesn't come with a countdown to when you can access my accounts. The door closed behind them, and Folu finally allowed herself to sink into the nearest chair, sobbing. Not from losing Kelechi, but from grieving the version of him she'd let herself believe in. Chinwe knelt beside her, arms wrapped tight around her shoulders. You did it, Folu. You protected everything. I know, Folu whispered, wiping her face. But it still hurts. News of the cancelled wedding spread through Lagos social circles within days, whispers twisting the story in every direction. Until Folu herself addressed it plainly at a business dinner weeks later, calm and composed, refusing to let shame that wasn't hers settle into her spirit. Kelechi's reputation crumbled under the weight of quiet truths that eventually surfaced. Business partners distancing themselves, his mother's name whispered with disdain at events she once dominated. Folu, meanwhile, returned to her warehouses, her import contracts, her life, richer not just in property, but in a hard-earned wisdom passed down from a mother who knew, long before Folu did, that language and instinct were the only inheritance that could never be stolen from her. If Folu's story taught you anything today, let it be this. Trust the instincts you can't explain, and never underestimate the power of staying silent until the right moment. Like this video if you believe Folu made the right choice. Subscribe for more stories like this one, and comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from tonight.